Jaime. There it was, somehow, come again to life. The Inn of the Kneeling Man. The whitewash was fresh on its upper floors, pale against dark smoke from the chimney. Light glimmered against two front windows, looking out onto a silty yard, the color of old milk. The yard was scarred with tracks, and the men who'd made them were still about, coming and going from the stables, the latrine, and a small, hastily erected sept. In the middle of it all there knelt a girl. It's the right place for a Stark, Jaime Lannister mused, thinking of old Torrin. The right place, but mayhaps the wrong age, isn't she? That was obvious, of course. He doubted this girl had seen her 4th name day, though she seemed to have an appetite beyond her years. She'd scarcely finished shoveling a fistful of mud into her mouth before the sight of the two riders sent her running. "We won't find Lady Sansa here," Brienne said icily. "And where will we find her, do you think?" She didn't dignify that with an answer. The girl was but a day's ride from Pennytree, Brienne had claimed. Nigh on a fortnight ago. Since then they'd wandered, down frozen gullies, up wind-swept bluffs, through dense forests dusted with snow. Despite the order to await his return, Jaime's men were surely following them by now. Sir Ilyn Payne wouldn't dare lose another Lannister, not after being held responsible for Tyrion's escape. His squires would be out there too with him. Lewis Piper, Garrett Page, and Josmond Peckleton, all eager to earn their spurs. And Garth Greenfield and Malor the Dornishman. They wouldn't abandon the man whom they owed their freedom. There'd be more too. Many more. Knights and huntsmen, seeking honor and glory. But honor and glory hadn't been found just yet. As she led the way, Brienne was doing everything in her power to obscure their horses' tracks. They doubled back, rode through streams, and kept upon earth that was hard and bare of snow. It was a lonely journey, far from roads and villages. They allowed themselves no fires, save when they sheltered deep within caves, to be seen only by bats and spiders. Conversation had been as meager as their meals. As they shared hard sausage, he'd asked how much farther they had to go. Brienne had scowled and told him to keep quiet, lest they be discovered. It was acorn paste and cattails on the 3rd day, and he'd asked who splinted her arm. She only shushed him, a flash of anger in her eyes. But while fording the Trident on the 7th day, Brienne had happened to spear a fish, and he'd told her any proper feast ought to have some dancing. And so they danced. The water's roar drowned out the sound of their blades, but Jaime could still hear the clacking laughs in his head each time the woman struck him. She was better than Sir Ilyn. Far better, even fighting without a shield. Jaime never landed a clean blow, yet as their sparring went on, he could see she was in worse pain than he was. "Who gave you your wounds?" he asked after a wince she couldn't hide. "The Hound," she said, sucking in breath from another thrust. Jaime parried. "What did he want?" "You." "And why is that?" He lunged, trying to use his quickness. Maddeningly, the huge woman was quicker still. The opening was gone almost before he'd moved. Then, lazily, she knocked the blade from his hand. He didn't say. A broken arm, cracked ribs, and no shield. And still she need not make an effort. Lucky he had no pride left to lose, then. He gathered up his sword, honored his opponent with a deep bow and a grin that was all teeth, and sat himself down on a rock to rest. Not a day or night had passed that Jaime hadn't wondered about Sandor Clegane. What did he want in exchange for the Lady Sansa? Who could give it to him? Where would he go? And now she says he wants me. As a man to bargain with. Perhaps that was it. But what he'd heard of the Hound's crimes at Saltpans disquieted him. Sane men might be keen to dicker, but broken men dealt only in violence. "You have some advantages," she'd said, after sheathing Oathkeeper and returning his mocking bow with a humorless one. Still, her frown had finally lifted. "For one, now you fight left-handed." He had soured then. "For two, will you tell me the Hound now fights like a snot-nosed squire?" Only 1 man in 10 favored his left, it was true, and it could be awkward to adjust for the sword coming from the other side. If you were a green boy. But 1,000 duels later, that boy would be transformed, the weakness overcome. Any knight of worth could fend off a left-handed swordsman well enough. Sandor Clegane was more than that, and had sparred with the left-handed Boris Blount 100 times besides. Nor had it gone too well for the White Knight on those occasions. Spare me your consolations. If you're leading me to battle, you're leading me to market. Yet there had been no butchering thus far, only an open road and a rebuilt inn. It was puzzling that they were here at all. Brienne had spent so many days evading Jaime's men, only to reveal herself here, for all to see. Hooded and bearded, Jaime himself looked no different from other men, and with his golden hand concealed in Brienne's bag, even his stump looked ordinary in the battle-ravaged riverlands. The warrior maid, though, could not escape notice, with her 6-foot frame, bandaged face, and heavy mail. Tales of her visit would spread like wildfire. Why, then? Have those wounds sapped her spirit so that finally she's beyond caring? They dismounted at the stables, handed their reins to the stable boy, then trudged across the yard. Jaime found himself remembering the last time the two had been here. There had been an innkeep who wasn't an innkeep, a trap that hadn't trapped them, and too much horse shit in the stables. Or has Brienne thrown in with outlaws now? Impossible. She was far too dull for that. The inn's common room had all the usual sounds. The scrapes of spoons, the clinks of cups, the mutter of men. A dozen patrons ate and drank at the tables, while half as many warmed themselves by the hearth. One of them saw the goodness of the father on a fiddle, his clumsiness with the instrument for everyone else to endure. Perhaps he's a famed bard in disguise, humbling himself with his bow in his offhand. The thought was absurd, Jaime knew, but no more absurd than he was. There was little room to sit, so they joined some men on a crowded bench. Next to Brienne sat a man with a crystal around his neck, and to his right, another man was reading from the Book of Holy Prayer. Then there were the badges, the 7-pointed star red on white, stitched to the breast of every cloak. Sparrows again, Jaime thought. I must be made of breadcrumbs. This part of the flock was like to call themselves poor fellows, but they all flew the same way, didn't they? From the table's far end, some foreign words caught Jaime's ear. High Valyrian. As a boy, he'd never paid the maester's lessons much mind, but he knew enough to place the girlish accent. Tyrashi traders, he realized, though they had long run out of dye for their beards. It was during the Battle of the Camps that their company had gone over to the young wolf. After that, he'd assumed they'd all died somewhere, or fled home, or turned brigand. A few had found the 7 gods instead, it seemed. If he'd had a right hand, Jaime Lannister would have helped them find the 7 hells as well. A fat boy appeared, sweat in his straw-like hair and a tankard in each hand. Ale? A cup of cider for me, said Brienne. She had ordered the same the last time. My dear cousin praised the ale here, Jaime said, remembering Cleos. Does your tongue have no curiosity? Brienne studied Jaime's smile. Ale is fine. The boy clumsily put the tankards down, sloshing half their drinks onto the table. Jaime lifted his for a toast. To our missing third. May my late cousin's memory loosen your lips. Or may the drink. He was a good man. For fawning and groveling? Few better. I pray his ghost finds rest. He drank deep, hoping she would match him. Instead, she only looked troubled. We never buried him. The dead should be buried. I agree. Can I count on you to bury each and all of my pieces, then, when the time comes? That got to her, for once. You hungry? Interrupted the boy. I've made pies. Inside is... rabbit. Jaime didn't give a fig what was in the pies. He was famished. Pie it is, then, baker boy. And tell the innkeep 2 rooms as well. You have a name? Aye, he does, but it's none of your business. An ill-favored woman stepped up to the table with a kettle and ladle. She moved down the bench, refilling bowls for the poor fellows. What should we holler when we're thirsty? And we will be thirsty. He answers to boy, and that's good enough for you. I had 2 boys, but 1 drowned. Won't be any confusion. She spat. The others take the floods. The floods killed the innkeep who wasn't an innkeep too, it seemed. A woman running an inn by herself. Must be dangerous. By myself? Why, I have a dozen husbands here. She gestured with her ladle to the stars along the bench. They protect me well enough. Husbands. The woman's jest sent him to wondering about his own life. What it might have been like if he'd been made protector of a woman and not a king. Lysa Lannister would have been her name. She'd always wanted a strong son, and he would have given her one, not like that doomed little errand boy. And she fancied him well enough. Her glances at court had been hardly subtle. Would she have ever grown into that fat and frightened woman at the Rock, if he'd been by her side, keeping her safe? It was a pointless question. The past was ash. Fool that he'd been, he'd have chosen Cersei over a dozen maids fairer than young Lysa. Well done, he answered. That's 6 better than Maegor, though I shudder at the thought of a dozen good mothers. The poor fellow with the crystal grumbled. We don't take kindly to japes about Maegor the Cruel. When he killed our brothers and took our swords, he left the realm to fall into wantonness and sin. That didn't take long. The pious were always keen to lecture. The least among them lost no chance to play the septon. Jaime grimaced and finished his tankard. I thought Maegor only had the one wife, said a Tyrashi. The tiger girl. The table of stars looked up, nonplussed. We speak of the old king, you dolt, one said. Leave it to a Tyrashi to confuse Maegor the Cruel with Maegor the Sunbird. Few in the 7 Kingdoms still spoke of Arryn Brightflame's spawn. In truth, there wasn't much to say. After the great council that crowned Aegon the Unlikely, the other claimants disappeared, for fear they would share the same fate as Aenys Blackfyre. Jaime only knew of the Sunbird because of Rhys. Near the end, he had demanded an emissary be sent to Volantis to recruit him as an ally against Robert. Varys had had to remind him that Maegor Targaryen was a decade dead. These are dark times, but we clutch our blades again, pure of heart, interrupted an older man with a star carved into his cheek. Soon the realm will atone for its sins. You'll see. Jaime belched. Oh, the world is not so bad, is it? Fervor was best met with silence, the Mad King had taught him, but the ale had made him bold. Winter is nigh, it's true, but the war is over. Riverrun has surrendered, and Blackwood and Bracken have ended their quarrel at last. He could take pride in what he'd accomplished there. Perhaps the last good thing he'd ever do. Goldenhand the Peacemaker. I care not for squabbles over which boy wears a crown. Before the comet, perhaps, but now the world is different. The days grow short, and the forests are full of demons, those of fire and those of ice. This is a new sermon. Ice demons? Are they the grumpkins who bring the winter? He means the wolves, said Boy, returning with their pies and fresh tankards. This again. He'd heard quite enough tales of this direwolf and her infernal pack. Or was the poor fellow talking about some other wolf? On how many legs do these wolves run? Jaime asked, thinking of the Karstarks, Robb Stark's erstwhile supporters. 2 or 4. It makes no matter. The Northmen are wargs, a star with a shaved head put in, taking up the tale. They worship trees and drink the blood of children to gain wicked powers. Beneath the cold moon their hair grows long and ragged. They drop to all fours and howl, and their teeth, oh, razor sharp. A maw of icicles, and hoarfrost, and death. Drunk on the gods and armed with blades. A perilous marriage. It was all Cersei's fault. He remembered that his Aunt Jenna had warned him of this. She was a wiser woman than his father had ever admitted. Perhaps Cersei would call her to court if I... No, He wouldn't see his sweet sister again. And what of these fiery ones? The Brotherhood, said Brienne. Outlaws. An order of sorcerers they are, the old star corrected. Red priests, necromancers, with swords of flame that can cast terror and sin. Their shadows flicker and dance in the night, stealing babies for their rituals. They say their sacrifices can raise the dead. Brienne's face darkened, and she quaffed her tankard. Since when do such stories frighten the warrior maid? It was nonsense. You only speak of Thoros of Myr, yes? Asked Jaime. I saw him at a tourney once. He looked more sot than sorcerer to me, and his only spell was to make his breakfast reappear after a melee. Seasons change, and so do men. The Red Ones are a vicious lot. A greedy lot, the innkeep broke in. The lord and the lady, king's men and queen's men. They come sniffing around, demanding a toll for protection, each higher than the last. I tell them, put those strapping young arms to work. Fish a stream, raise a barn, dig a well. But no, they'd rather burn their night fires and rob the farmers and do gods know what else. Well, let the hangwoman hang me, and the lightning lord strike me down. To hell with them both. They weren't here when the waters rose. My sparrows were. 7 saved them. So there's a rift between Stoneheart and Dondarrion, is there? That was good. Perhaps the rivals would kill each other off, just as Aegon and Rhaenyra had. He'd hate to leave a job undone. Jaime emptied his tankard and looked for Boy. He was behind him already, with another drink. Lord Bonifer the Good will rout the evil out, said the young sparrow to his right, closing his book. The new Warden of the Rivers, gods be praised. Do their fantasies have no end? Or is Hasty inventing titles for himself now? Jaime flexed the fingers on his missing hand. The small folk were quick to call any man a horse a lord, but to name a man warden was an honor too far. Sir Bonifer is not a lord, but a castellan, as I recall, and he has no army, save his holy 100. 100 would be enough. His sword's blessed by the smith, proclaimed the bald one, and the warrior is adding strength to his arm besides. I hear he's giving out land for oaths of service. I mean to stand with him in the war to come. Where else can a man find glory? In the stables. It was Peter Baelish who had been granted Harrenhal, along with all of its lands and incomes, and those lands were vast, tens of thousands of acres, stretching from the Trident to Harrentown, and farther south still, along the shores of the God's Eye. But Littlefinger wasn't there, and Cersei had named Sir Bonifer Castellan in his absence. With winter soon upon them, the lands would lie fallow for the nonce, but the promise of spring's bounty was as good as gold in hand. If Hasty gave each man 5 acres, he could raise a sizable army. Let us hope Sir Bonifer the Good stays good and loyal. The old sparrow looked over at Brienne, curiously, as if seeing her armor for the first time. Milady, begging your pardon, but in the 7-pointed star it is written, the father smiles upon a daughter with a babe at her breast. No babe can nurse through a breastplate. Jaime sniggered as Brienne took a sip of ale, no doubt buying a moment to compose herself. Then she looked the old star in the eye. My Septon told me that the father is like all fathers, teaching us, giving us guidance, showing his children the way. But no doubt a father is proud when his children can finally stand on their own and find their own way in the world. The old man shook his head. Your Septon told you wrong. Men and women are only truly grown when they submit fully to the will of the Father. You should tell your Septon that. I'll be sure to when I see him. Brienne gave the old fool a smile. It was only a little smile, no more than politeness demanded, but it was a smile nonetheless. She had never smiled for Jaime, not that he could remember. The fiddler played a few more songs, and then the poor fellows sang some hymns. Not one of them sang as sweetly as a real sparrow, nor even a seagull. But Jaime sat and listened contentedly, savoring his pie. A fine last meal. Another oatcake or piece of salt beef might await him yet, but He'd never fill his belly like this again. The thought should have made him angry. Angry at the sparrows and their delusions. Angry at the faithless Tyrashi and the artless fiddler. At Ilan Payne for never finding him. At Sir Bonifer Hasty and his holy schemes. Then there was Lady Stoneheart, and Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr. Those damned wolves and the thrice-damned cold. And Brienne, who'd chosen once again to stare at the bottom of her tankard rather than look him in the eye. He should have been furious with her most of all. Instead, Jaime found himself grinning. Mayhaps it was only the ale gone to his head, but he couldn't help wondering what would become of the men around him. Their situations weren't so different from his own, really. In a year, many of them would be just as dead. Perhaps all of them would be. That was what came of winter. Food would be scarce, brigands would be savage, and the wars that plagued these lands might not have ended after all. They could guess as much, couldn't they? And yet tonight, they were joyful. They were alive, and their songs, harsh as they were to the ear, were alive too. And so was he. When Boy had cleared away their empty tankards, the star with the holy book turned back to them. "Where are you travelers headed? We could escort you there on the morrow, for some coin. You'll want a shield against the cold that comes in the night, and the terrible fires of the damned." "Toward Acorn Hall, but we have no need of protection," Brienne answered, only the slightest flush to her cheeks. "We thank you." She rose from the table and made her way up the stairs, Boy scampering behind her with a ring of keys. Acorn Hall? If that were true, they'd be found in days. A lie, then, Jaime thought. A lie so easily spoken by the Maid of Tarth. He wanted to ask where they were really going, or whether the Hound was in league with Dondarrion, or 100 other questions. With the ale in her, perhaps she'd finally tell a tale or two. Tell the truth, at least. To a dying man. But when he made it to the second floor, after a trip to the latrine, her door was already shut and bolted. He rapped the stump of his sword hand on the door. "Brienne?" The only reply he got was the sound of snores. On leaving the inn the next morning, they made their way past the docks. To Jaime's surprise, the skiff they had once sailed from River Run was still there. By some miracle, it had survived the floods, and was well kept to boot. It had been patched up in a few places, and even given a new rudder. "Should we buy it back, Brienne? I've half a mind to sail off to the warmth of the Stepstones, leave this cold world behind. You and me, 2 fishermen in blue waters. I can manage a net with one hand, I'll wager. And you can add some more freckles to your nose." Brienne narrowed her eyes, perhaps unsure how much of it was a joke. "I have a duty, Sir Jaime." "So do you." "Duty. Aye." They rode south. Soon enough, they neared the river road, where they'd have to make a choice. Would they turn west, towards River Run, or east, towards Lord Harroway's town? Brienne chose neither. With no hesitation, she pressed southward still, on a smaller trail, the way to Acorn Hall. She'd spoken no lie after all. Jaime had resigned himself to a hellish few and final days. They'd keep a feverish pace, just as before, a desperate bid to leave their pursuers behind, along with anyone else that might be at their heels. Knights, brigands, demons. He was certain they would make haste now, if ever. He would have bet on it. But as it went, he'd have lost his purse. They rode easy the next day, stopping frequently to stretch their legs and knead their blistered feet. Come evening, as the sky darkened, she decreed they stop. The following day and night were the same. On the third night, she even allowed a fire. She wants us to be found. Nothing else made sense. The Hound would catch their scent at the Inn of the Kneeling Man, and from there, they'd be easy prey to stalk. Those pious Tyrashi might have even been in league with Clegane. They were all deserters in the end. Yet for now, they were still alone. They'd seen no travelers since the inn, nor any game either, and all the birds were already nesting down in Dorne. Within the woods, There was naught to hear but the rustle of wind through the branches and the crackle of their fire. "How'd you come by that shield?" he asked her, pointing it out amongst her belongings. He knew the coat of arms from the White Book, but it was curious to see the tree and falling star in such a place, in such a hand. "It's the one you gave me," Brienne told him from across the fire. "Painted over in Duskendale. Men told me its old sigil was unseemly. An unfortunate gift. The Lothston bat." Then he remembered. "I must have forgotten my history. Every child in the Riverlands fears that Mad Danelle will come for them and drink their blood should they misbehave. But not so unfortunate a gift, really." She raised an eyebrow, so he continued. "Lady Catelyn's mother was a Went, kin of my late brother Sir Oswell. You've no doubt heard of him with his famed bat helm. Well, according to Oswell, his grandfather inherited that sigil when he took to bride the last Lothston daughter and became the Lord of Harrenhal. So one might say that—" "I can't lift it," she blurted out. "A shield from her mother to match the sword from her father? Is that what you were going to say? Well, it makes no matter any more. I cannot wield it in battle. Not with my arm. It's healing too slow, or not healing right at all." Crippled. That was the reason she'd barely spoken, Jimmy realized. Her arm was the secret she'd hoped to keep. Had she not wanted his sympathy, his commiseration? Did she think they would somehow sully her? His temper flared. "You're leading us both to die, then? Why?" "Honor," Brienne said dully, looking down at her broken arm. "Duty." The Tully words, Jamie knew. Lady Catelyn's words, though the last was missing. Family. By law, Lady Sansa was that. His brother's wife. His good sister. He'd had another good sister once. She had been Sansa's age, and not near as pretty, but beautiful to Tyrion. Tysha Lannister would have been her name. He had stood in his father's solar as she begged on the floor. Between stammers and sobs, she said her love for Tyrion was true, but the lion was deaf to the screams of lesser beasts. Besides, what did Tywin Lannister know of love? It was expected she would be flogged, as she was, but Jaime never imagined his father would make her a gift to the barracks. Jaime had been no boy then. No, he was already a Kingsguard, a Kingslayer, a father even. But that day, in front of his own father, he had never felt so much a child. I should have helped her, stood between her and the monster, pleaded and promised and bartered. Anything. He hadn't saved Tysha from her bear pit. No, he'd helped throw her in. "You were cruel," was all he could manage to his father's face afterward. "We were." Lord Tywin had not so much as looked up from the parchment before him. "The world is cruel, and more so for stunted creatures. Let him learn that and be stronger for it. In battle, you love your armor, do you not? Well, we suited your brother in steel today. He does not know it now, but in time, he will love us for our lie." His father had not considered that Jaime might be speaking of their cruelty to Tysha. Jaime Lannister had buried the memory deep inside him, along with the others. Lord Rickard and his son, Queen Rhaella, the Stark boy. He could only laugh darkly about it now. A buried girl. As buried as Cleo's Frey. Brienne took the first watch, leaving Jaime to huddle under his blanket. Before long, a light snow began to fall, white flakes collecting in his beard. Another reminder of his age. I'm a man, not a boy. Or was he as helpless as a babe, swaddled and ready for sacrifice? King's blood had power in it, Rhys used to say, but 300 years after the conquest, little and less of it still ran in Jaime Lannister's veins. He'd worn many titles: Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, Warden of the East, even Lord of Casterly Rock, to his late father, but none of them king. Oh, he'd killed one king, cuckolded a second, and sired two more. But none of that wrapped him in any royalty of his own. What spells could wizards weave with an oathbreaker's blood? Beneath his blanket, he gripped his sword, waiting for sleep to take him. Or perhaps the others. A twig snapped. Jaime shot up in alarm. There, emerging from the trees, was a figure. A shadow with the head of a wolf. Warg. He threw off his covers and leapt to his feet, sword ready in his hand. He never saw the other one. The blow to his head sent him straight to the earth, and all at once a man was upon him. Not a man. A corpse. Beneath the pot helm he still wore, the dead man's lone eye was filled with hate, his bony hand tightening around Jaime's throat. Something was pressing down on his left wrist, and his stump swung up at his attacker without effect. All Jaime could do was wriggle and bite. So he did. The wight screamed as Jaime's teeth sunk into his arm. Clutching the gash, it fled, but that only made room for a boot to land on Jaime's ribs. Pain shot up his side. For while, something growled. Jaime gasped for air, the taste of blood in his mouth. A second kick. For Heward! It was the voice of a Northman, one with a tangled beard and a furious mane. Jaime thrashed wildly. He wrenched his hand free from beneath the boot and scrambled about, clawing at the dirt, searching for a sword, or a rock, or anything at all. For Jory! A third kick, this time to Jaime's arse. It sent him tumbling forward. The laugh that came from beneath the helm was chilling. He's here. Jaime looked up and saw it. A snarling hound's head, hiding the scarred face beneath. Clegane. Light from the fire flickered and danced over the worn steel. A demon. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her too. There she was, standing behind them. Do something, he begged silently. Unsheathe your sword. Fight! But the Maid of Tarth only watched. Dutifully,